Of course, as soon as I hit the record button. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Apex Podcast. As always, I am your host, Jan Almasy, and today we are coming live from the state of Texas. I am super excited for today's interview because I've had, first of all, if you guys have been listening to me for any length of time, you know that I'm a science nerd, right? So I came from a nursing and a clinical psychology background, and then decided that I was going to take my hand at, podcasting and marketing and all these other shenanigans that now you guys have to deal with on a regular basis. So if you've ridden with me for this long, I appreciate you. I love you. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. And I am watching those numbers because I do have statistics. So if you're not hitting it, I'll know. But today I'm super excited to bring a guest on named Kyle Jones. Now, here's a little bit about Kyle that I was able to kind of find, and I'm just going to take this directly from their website here at iCRYO, which is the business that we'll kind of dive in, and you'll understand more as we go through this interview. But I'll just give you a little bit of an introduction to Kyle, and then we'll kind of bring Kyle into the Apex family here. So, Kyle has always been the spitting image of what true health and wellness looks like inside and out. Growing up as a multi-sport athlete from 4 years old, it was always natural to live a health-conscious lifestyle. Thriving in football through high school, he gained awareness from various colleges and achieved a full-ride scholarship split between athletics and academics. Kyle went on to play Division II as a quarterback in college, and this leadership role enhanced Kyle's ability to be a natural-born leader to his peers. College was a turning point for Kyle, though, as his passion for overall wellness was at an all-time high. His vision of being a college or pro athlete started to diminish, and he began to take his competitive nature into other sports such as powerlifting and bodybuilding. After spending 5 years powerlifting, winning 2 national titles, and another 5 years bodybuilding, achieving his pro card with the GBO, Kyle was resilient and always conquering anything he set his mind to. Dialing in on nutrition and how the body truly operates to the cellular level is when things really started to get interesting for him. He transferred to Texas State University to pursue a fulfilling life in exercise sports science, and he double majored in business management as his entrepreneurial spirit was acquired by his father and has always been ingrained in his DNA. As he dug deeper into the science, he realized he was on to something life-changing after he was introduced to cryotherapy. He put his entire life on hold after he helped integrate cryotherapy into physical therapy clinic, as he believed that this could be something greater than he had ever imagined. After managing the cryotherapy division of the clinic for roughly 3 years, he decided to go out on his own, and this is what we're going to dig into today, just so everybody understands. He decided to go out on his own and open what we now know as the global recovery and wellness brand, iCRYO. At only 24 years old, this young man took a leap of faith and pioneered an industry that was untouched. Because in the research that I was doing, I found out that when he Googled iCRYO or cryogenic franchises for the first time, nothing showed up in Google. And that can be scary unless you're an entrepreneur. Then it's exciting. So, Kyle, welcome to the show, man.
Good to be here, man.
I'm so hyped to have you here today. So one thing that didn't really pop out of that is when we were just talking about this before the mics turned on, when you decided to get into the franchise and everything, you were only 24 years old, when all that timeline plays out. So what is, when you hear that read out loud, because I know this is on your website, but I feel like when we hear somebody else read it back to us, sometimes maybe we're reminded of things. What does that bring to mind for you hearing that read out loud?
Honestly, just mind blowing that I was able to have a platform that big at such a young age to be able to take my strengths and take my network. And honestly, I give credit to everything that I am today as an entrepreneur, as a son, as a brother, as a friend, as a family member. I give all of my attributes to my network being able to surround myself with people that were much, much smarter than me at various things, and learning from them and growing. So when you read off that story, it took me back. It took me back to when I was 24 years old and I was learning. I was being mentored by some of the greatest minds on the planet in different realms, whether it's relationship building, personal development, personal growth, my spiritual connection, just being able to team up and lock arms with people. I think what people miss the most, especially young millennials and the generation to come after that, is nobody really focuses on having a strong mentor in life. You have heroes, you have people have idols, people have people that they look up to, but those aren't people that they can really connect with and grow with. And for me, I with the one thing that I would tell everybody is, if you don't have a mentor, you need one. It doesn't matter if you're 18, 28, or 88, right? Everybody should have somebody they're learning from to keep growing in life. And for me, I wish I would have just had somebody at a younger age. I wish your story that you just reminded me about was the age of 18, not 24, right?
Right.
I wish I'd have had a mentor at that age. So it's just, it makes me reflect and remember, you're never short of connecting with people and growing.
Right. Now in that space, so the people like the Apex community, right? So the a little bit of a backstory just so that you can understand how this community kind of was birthed, and then I have a question for you that I think will kind of bring a lot of value into this community. So when I was, I think I was between 16 and 17 years old. It was my summer between 16 and 17 years old. I almost overdosed when I was in high school, right? Because like I had all of these, I had been homeschooled my entire life until I went to high school. I never really had a group that I fit in with. I was a 3-sport athlete. I was in choir, I was in band, but like I never felt like I could connect with my peers because I was always having these wild ideas, right? And like trying to build things. And like everybody was just like, okay, this dude's a little bit off his chain. So, but that happened. And then in 2017, so that would have been like 2011, right? So then I get out, I join the military, start the podcast. And in 2017, we experience a massive amount of suicides across our county. And I mean, I think we set the national record for the number of high school age suicides in a school year. It was horrible. I mean, it was just like this dark cloud came over the community. And so the apex kind of came out of this idea that by definition, the apex is the highest given point of any path or object, right? And that if somebody believes that they have reached an apex and that there's nothing left for them out to pursue in the world, that gets really demotivating really quickly, especially if that apex is not very high. And so my whole message in this community that we formed is really like, okay, how do you take it when life punches you in the face, or when life presents you with an opportunity that might be contrary to what everybody else wants you to do? So like when I joined the military, my mom grew up in Soviet occupation Slovakia. So she did not enjoy the idea of the military, right? My dad had a lot of friends in Vietnam. We come from a family of military members, but I also was, for lack of a better term, a shithead when I was in high school, right? And so like nobody believed that I was actually going to be able to pull it off. They all thought it was a horrible plan. But I joined the military and it's forever changed my life. It gave me the discipline to do what I'm doing now. It gave me an amazing network of people. It taught me a lot of things. So the question that I have for you with that setting the stage is, what was it like when you were sitting there and your football coach sat you down and was like, Kyle, football might not be for you, bud.
I remember that.
And then how do you reframe that? You know, like I heard that on the podcast episode I was listening to, and I was like, that is perfect. How do you deal with, like, because you got this scholarship, you're on academic and everything, the amount of people that were in your life that had to have been pushing in that direction. But you know, I'll just kind of open up the floor for you to kind of go into that.
It's something that I could, I remember like it was this morning, to be honest. I mean, it just, it hit me. It was a blow. I think it was a blow at that point in time. You know, I was 18 years old, 19 years old. And it was kind of a blow to my ego a little bit. You know, I was, a college quarterback. I had a full ride. You know, I was kind of high on life. I was, doing great things, just felt like I was growing as a young adult. And it just kind of took a blow to me. But, to be honest, you have to take certain things like that, especially powerful things that really hit you in the heart. Sometimes when something hits you directly in the soul, you look at it, you have to take a step back and analyze, I have choices here. Everybody has a choice in life, right? And I think the biggest issue is sometimes people fail to just make the choice and make the decision and choose a route and move forward with it, right? We have that paralysis by analysis type of action, right? And for me, my dad's always taught me and always trained me, just fire, just go, and then figure it out along the way, right? So for me, I've kind of always had that mindset of, hey, I'm going to take in the information, I'm going to take the feedback from my peers, from my mentors, from people that I surround myself with, and I personally have the choice to make. It's not their decision, it's mine, right? So I was faced with a pretty tough decision. I think every ounce of me as a kid, as a teenager, was saying, stick with football, and every ounce of the innovative and adult side that I
Mm,
was building at the time was saying, Kyle, like, you really probably need to switch gears in life and take a step back and
mm.
realize that people around you are noticing things about what your future could potentially be. And so for me, I did make the tough choice. I did transition away from football and paid attention a little bit more of a wellness mindset as far as what my future would look like. And I've never looked back since then. Do I miss the field? Do I miss playing the sport of football? I do a ton. Seeing the Super Bowl this past weekend, it brings up memories, of playing in certain games, and even certain plays are still ingrained in my head. And so I still have those
Mm,
memories,
mm.
right? They're good memories. They're happy memories. I ended on a good note, but for me, it was a chance for me to evolve my life and take my strengths and apply it somewhere else.
Right. Right. No, I love that. I really empathize with that because when I got to the point, so over the course of COVID, when all of this, but because when my business really started to move was in 2020. And so I had always had a passion for podcasting, for storytelling, copywriting. I mean, everything to do with like, how do you convey yourself to the world? How do you articulate yourself to the world? I'd always been fascinated with it. And so I'd like, on the side, taught myself how to code a website here and there, and taught myself some practical skills because I was just firing. I didn't know exactly why I needed to pursue all these skill sets. And a lot of my friends thought I was nuts because, like, instead of going to the bar on a Friday, I'm just teaching myself how to build a Squarespace website. And I'm a nurse in
Yep.
nursing school. And they're like, what are you doing, bro? Like, that's what marketing people do. And I had no idea why I was so interested in all of that stuff. But I was just like, when my intuition tells me I need to do something, it's almost like I will literally vomit if I don't carry that action out within the course of like 3 days. It almost physically pains me. So when it came to the point where it was time, like, okay, I was an ICU nurse, ER trauma nurse for 2.5 years. I had captain's bars on the table for the military. And I had been working for that since I was like 5 years old, man. Like my grandpa taught me how to fold a flag when I was a kid. And immediately I was like, I'm putting a
Yeah.
uniform on. Like that's happening. And so I'm sitting there and I remember having a conversation with my colonel at the time. And I was like, sir, I'm literally like crying in his office at this point. I'm like, I have absolutely no idea why I can't accept these captain's bars, but I can. I need to separate. Can we come up with a plan for me to separate in the next 6 months? And I had just promoted to tech sergeant. I had just and been given a unit of about 30 new recruits that I was in charge of leading. I had those captain's bars on the table. They were standing up a helicopter unit at the base, and so all of this stuff that I thought was my dream for a very long time, but my intuition was like, nah, I need you to go over here. And seeing that and having to reframe that and really kind of move and say, listen, I will understand what this means later. Have you ever encountered that type situations like that where you're like, okay, I know that I need to do this now. Everybody else may not understand why this makes sense, but it'll make sense to me later.
Yep.
I'm
You
going to do it.
immediately get the hunger to pursue it at any cost, right? I mean, you're so determined, but you don't know why you're determined, but you know there's an answer at the end of the tunnel. And for me, I think it,
Hmm.
belief is so powerful. Hope is so powerful. When you have true belief in something, it's amazing some of the qualities that you can possess and the strength of of your mental capacity, how it can just become something completely different than what you had ever experienced before. And I think it's exciting when you have that feeling. It's exciting when you get to that level of motivation, when you get to that level of commitment within yourself. It's mind blowing. It's exciting. It's fun. It's thrilling. It provides change and opportunity. So yeah, 1,000% know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And so I'm going to kind of use this to transition us into a little bit of a conversation about like the entrepreneurial mindset in general. Because there's two things that I think you have to be able to do really, really well inside of a space that we kind of exist in, right? Like this rapidly scaling business. You have to be able to do two things. You have to be able to think entrepreneurially and not lose that mindset because unfortunately, as things get bigger, they get less agile. If you're not purposely keeping them agile. right? Like the world's natural state is entropy, and it will continue to move from complex to simple no matter what you do. And then the other side is being able to build a really strong culture and empower other people to do the same thing. Because if you're just the entrepreneur, you're just going to be a independent solo practice for the rest of your life if you can't transfer those mindset skills onto, other people inside of your organization. So I'm curious. I'll kind of walk you through three of the principles that I've kind of worked around and identified, and then I also kind of want to hear and see like what are the things that you really hold close to your heart when it comes to how you actually orient yourself as an entrepreneur, right? So here are my three. So the first one is understand the benefits of boredom.
1,000%.
And so so I say that one because that's where I have had all of my greatest. I have an 8-foot whiteboard in my hallway, bro. Like I've had my greatest ideas on Saturday mornings when I haven't looked at my phone yet, and I have a blank whiteboard to just draw random stuff. Or in the middle of like a prayer service or something is when I'll get a lot of ideas. But the only reason that is because I'm disconnected. I always say you can't output and input at the same time. If you're constantly taking input, you can't output. Okay, so then number two, and this actually is cool because I think that we kind of hit on this already. It's self-awareness, self-acceptance, and action. So there's a lot of people that are aware of what they want, but they haven't accepted the fact that that's what they want. And there's a lot of people that have accepted the fact that that's what they want, but they're not willing to take action. So I think those are my three stages. You have to be able to be aware, to be able to accept, and you have to accept in order to act. And then the third one is see big problems as big opportunities.
Oh, yeah, that's a good
And that
one. Oh, I like that.
so those are kind of the three that I've kind of like really sat and been like, how the hell did I pull this off? Because when people are asking me the military, leaving nursing, quitting my job in the middle of the pandemic, when all of my friends are making buku bucks travel nursing, and I'm like, hey guys, I'm going to cut myself back to like borderline poverty for a year and build this business. They're like, dude, really? Right now? Pandemic economy? That's what you're going to try to do? All right, bro. Like,
You want to
go
have a
for
so
it.
that's another thing. I think living an entrepreneurial lifestyle, you nailed it on the money. Everything you just spoke about, but I mean, you definitely have to be willing to fail. Failure cannot
Mm,
it can't alter you. It can't set you off of your railroad tracks to success. I mean, I think that's one thing I learned very quickly. And my father was a mentor of mine growing up through my teenage years and still is today. But one of the things he told me early on is when I started to pursue certain things in life and I would hit a roadblock or a speed bump or just a freaking brick wall and fail completely at what I was doing. He would sit me down and say, hey, a failure is a part of success. It's a part of figuring out the solution. And you correlate it to
mm,
a math problem. When you were learning what 2 + 2 was and you got it wrong, well, did you stop learning math? No, you tried again, and you finished the problem and you came up with a solution, the answer. It's the same thing with whether it's a small or a big goal or a task that you have in mind. I personally always go into it expecting to hit some point of failure, right? Whether it's small or big, because that's going to help me learn and grow. If you figure it out
right.
all the time and you're just perfect and you never suffer any type of a loss, you really can't,
Dude, I won't do business
yeah,
with those
you
kind of
really
people.
can't,
It
you,
freaks
you
me
can't
out.
understand the gratification that success brings you if you never understood failure before.
Mm,
So I think that's one of the biggest things
right.
where people get scared of going into the entrepreneur life is they're scared of failure, and you can't be. I think that's the first thing people have to understand.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love that. And to kind of expand on that point, I just kind of tossed in there of not wanting to do business with people like that. It's like every single time I've encountered a person that is portraying themselves as with lack of failure, and I can't. It's really hard for me to trust them because I'm the kind of person that I'll straight up in a client meeting be like, "Hey, we've never done this before. Like, we have the technology. In theory, this should work really, really well. I'm gonna need this to be a two-way communication street while we're pulling this off. Because I would much rather just set that up front than come into a meeting. And my dad always taught me. So another thing that we have in common, my father was an entrepreneur as well. He was one of the first 400 respiratory therapists ever
Oh,
certified in the
wow.
nation. Um, and then like introduced me to like the guy that invented the ventilator growing up, and just had all of these crazy connections where I was able to see the same types of things. Okay, failure is not the end of the world. If you encounter something that you can't solve, there's probably somebody in your network that knows how to solve it. So just call somebody, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Like there's all of these little things that I didn't even realize were valuable entrepreneurial lessons until I got here. And I'm like, holy crap, my childhood has been good. I won
Yeah.
the parent lottery. Thank you, Lord. Right. um, but so this fear of failure that people experience can be crippling. I mean, absolutely crippling. So are there like ways that you tend to reframe failure when it happens, or ways that you kind of can pick yourself back up and get back into the
Yeah,
game?
honestly, the first thing I do, you just mentioned it a few seconds ago, is reach out to my peers and my network. A lot of the
Mhm.
times when I don't have the answer to something, or I try to pursue something on my own, and I reach at points where I just can't figure out the solution, or I keep running into points of failure. I mean, I've failed at the same task a half dozen times, and then I reach out to somebody who, either I'm close to, whether it's a friend, a colleague, shoot, an employee. I've got staff that I hire that I go to for advice sometimes. I mean, for me, there's a nugget everybody can bring to the table, right? Everybody has something that the
Mhm.
other person doesn't. So I've always jokingly said, I don't care if you're the janitor or the CEO, I'm going to have an identical conversation with both of you, because there's something I can extract that I can benefit from you, and vice versa, right? So for me, it's
Right.
really understanding that everybody does bring some type of value to the table, but until you're ready to really get to the same level and understand that you are seeing eye to eye with somebody and speaking to them directly head on, you're never going to be able to extract what that is.
Right. Well, and that's what something that's so interesting about my field in this marketing space, right? So there's a lot of people that I've talked to that have said, Jan, what did nursing school do to prepare you for marketing? Like how did you go about this? Which in the majority of it was just listening to hours and hours and hours of podcasts, and like I'm reading a textbook right now on designing for human cognition on the online. Like I just do weird shit like that. That was self-taught. But the biggest thing that nursing taught me was this A, doing report at the end of shifts, between, nurse to nurse to tell everything about a patient, taught me how to tell short, impactful stories. Because that nurse does not want to spend more than 10 minutes at the desk. They want to get their day started. And I worked in the ICU. So I've got 3 people that have actively been trying to kick the bucket on me for 12 hours. And I have to explain to you all of the things that are important about them, plus like what they are and who they are as a person in less
Yep.
than 3 minutes. And so that really taught me a lot of that. And the second thing is empathy, because there were days where in the ICU, say I would have one patient that I would have to go in and provide a terminal diagnosis to with a doctor, and sit there and absorb and really be there with a family as they're grieving, pretty much immediately, and then go to the very next room and discharge somebody that just overcame an illness, and have to experience that joy and happiness that they're also experiencing. And what it taught me, to your point about the janitor and the CEO, is that you have infinitely more to learn from other people than you think. Because I've learned more about what it means to be human in those types of situations than I ever have from some dual PhD lecture expert that intellectually has all the answers.
Yep, it's life lessons, man. That's the biggest thing, is you learn the most doing the most, and you learn the most collaborating amongst other people. And
Mm,
I think that's what people fail to do, is they get stuck existing in life, and they're not thriving through life. And
mm,
I see that happen all the
mm,
time. This world is going a million miles an hour, and sometimes people just exist in the world. They just go about, what society tells you to do, and they don't venture off and
mm.
be the weird guy in high school, right? That everybody can't understand. Be the person where somebody walks into a room and they're like, I don't even know what's going through this guy's mind right now, right? And for me, I've always said, we jokingly
Yeah.
we'll have prospective franchisees come in. There's a few things that I'm very direct about. One of them is I don't want you in this company unless you're very passionate about helping others. Period. The passion has to be there. So you talked about culture earlier. That's one thing that I truly
Mm,
believe that we separate from our competitors is yes, do our competitors have great business models, great services, good executive teams? I don't feel like anybody has the culture that iCRYO does. And when you step into the four walls of our corporate office here, you feel that. You feel that energy. You feel all of our employees are dedicated to this brand. And I think that's what separates us apart from the rest of our competitors is that culture and that passion.
Right. So that's a perfect segue into talking about energy and positivity, right? Because those are two real pillars about how you operate as a person. Um, and well, as far as I know from reading and listening, right? You're going to be able to give us the real answer right now. But what do those two words really
It is
mean to you?
hilarious that you say that. So those are two things that I preach about the most. If anybody that knows me, I'm a very positive person. You'll hardly hear me ever hear me talk about negative things. I just don't like that projectivity. But it's the easiest way for me not to hang out with you. Is if you're a negative person, you're going to get very, very few phone calls and messages from me wanting to do anything, right? Whether it's on a friendship level or a business level. From an
Mm,
energy
mm.
perspective, I'm a big believer in energy. So there was actually a study done. God, I wish I would have kept this because I tell this story all the time. There was a study that was done years ago that actually proved you could feel somebody's energy from over 20 feet away. And I remember that, and
Mm,
it's stuck into my
mm,
head forever because you can. When somebody walks into a room, you can sense is there positivity coming from that person? Is there negativity? Is it a dull type of atmosphere? I want people when
mm.
Kyle walks into a room, I want them to feel electrified. I want them to feel like, man, we just went up 3 notches. I mean, Kyle hasn't even said a word, but he's pumped up inside, right? I mean, for me, that's the type of energy you need to surround yourself with. If you're not feeling the
Yeah.
jitters and the good vibes around the people that you're sitting next to, well, there's a problem. You need to change seats somewhere. And for me, I think that's what I look for when I hire somebody. When we bring somebody in as an employee for the corporate side or a franchisee to expand the brand somewhere. And Shelly Williams is a perfect one.
Mm.
We talked about you being in Canton, Ohio. Our franchisee in Canton, Ohio, Shelly Williams, she embodies everything around positivity and good energy. I remember the first
Oh
time I
yeah.
met her, she was smiling, she was laughing. You know, we weren't even having a laughing conversation. I think she laughed a couple times. She giggled a couple times, and that's people that I want to surround myself with. Those are people that I want inside the
Mm,
iCRYO movement in the culture of this company, and to be able to collaborate in a positive way.
mm. Yeah. No, I think that is so important. I had a conversation on a podcast not too long ago because I'm a huge psychology nerd, right? And so when I was first building the business, I decided, okay, my dad always used to tell me growing up, he was like, you can either get an MBA or you can hire MBAs, pick one. And I was like, I want to hire MBAs someday.
But I
That's my goal. Uh, so so instead I was like, okay, you know what? If I can, but what that taught me is if I can hone in on something that's not business oriented and make that my primary skill set, I can fill in my gaps in other areas. So what I decided to really focus in on is how do I understand the human person, right? How do I understand for me, the dynamic of spirituality, mentality, and physicality. Like, how do I understand how all three of those balance themselves? And what motivates a person to put their best foot forward in the world? Right. And I was like, if I can understand that, then I can help people reach their audiences in that way and form relationships. But then I can also use that in my teams, and really try to grow it that way. And one of the things that I've noticed is in those conversations that I'm having about psych, there are these like vibrational levels that you're able to exist on, right? These different planes of existence that you're able to encounter. And I can tell when I encounter somebody that's not necessarily negative, but they haven't reached a level of awareness yet to even understand what their potential is or what they're capable of. And we call these limiting beliefs, right? And you encounter these limiting beliefs and they prevent you from embodying this version of yourself that you're actually capable of. And that can be, negativity from your parents, negativity from peers, societal pressures. We talked about it a little bit earlier about like, well, this is what society wants you to do. Um, have you encountered positions in your life where you're like, okay, this is uh, I can tell that I'm starting to sink or I'm heading in a direction that it's changing my vibrational level and like your intuition is off, and have you ever, found a way to kind of combat that or detect it earlier and prevent it from going further
Yeah,
downhill?
honestly, I think that it kind of reminds me of when we started the franchise model. We opened the first location in Houston, Texas. I had no idea if I wanted a franchise or if I wanted to own a bunch of these around the Houston area. And it got to a pivotal point to where I remember me and my father were in a previous franchise together. So I knew what it was like to franchise. I knew the business in a box mentality, right? You had every system you need to move forward. But we ran into, internally in my mind, I was trying to figure out what was the right route? What was the right route to take? And we got to a certain point to where you realize how much it costs to actually start a franchise. It's not cheap by any means, and I don't come from money. So it was, making a tough decision of, do we literally, and when I say literally, there's no exaggeration there at all, do we literally put everything we have on the line? Do we put all of our finances, all of our savings into this business model and create something that we don't even know if it's going to work, right? We had no idea if this was even going to be successful. And it was really understanding, and taking a leap of faith and trusting our abilities, trusting our strengths, trusting our team to push this brand in the right way.
Mm, and that trust is a huge
Trust is
thing,
massive.
I think, too, amongst people. When you have a group of people, and I've always been fascinated on how trust is formed, right? Because trust is this thing where it's like if somebody is, they do a lot of studies with it inside of like the special forces and special operations, right? It's like trust is not the person that always holds you accountable to buy the book, right? But it's also not the person that always lets you break the rules. There's this weird fine line in between that's like, okay, sometimes the person you trust is the one that has your back and helps you fix a problem without telling dad, but then on the other hand of that, it's the type of person that you do something so egregious that they tell dad to keep you from hurting yourself. And forming that inside of a team is kind of an interesting thing. Do you guys do anything purposeful as far as the team at iCRYO's corporate headquarters? Like, I know some people will do roundtables, other people will do events where everybody's kind of bonding at potlucks or dinners or outings and stuff. Like, how do you guys keep that
Well,
culture moving
I'm
forward
definitely a
within
big
your?
believer in any roundtables discussions in general. I think every meeting we have, whether it's the executive team, the board members, breakout department meetings, everything is viewed as a roundtable. You obviously have
Mm,
one person who kind of leads the meeting and makes sure we stay on track with the agenda, but everything's a roundtable here. Everything's collaborative. We, I tell you what, I've been a part of a lot of teams in my life, and the only way to truly function as a unit is to have that collaboration. The only way to excel as a group,
mm,
they say rising tide raises all ships, is to do just that, do that together, collaborate together, come up with ideas together, and create solutions together. It creates that bond, that it
right.
strengthens that culture that we talked about. And from the first location all the way to today, I remember starting once a month, we would do a team bonding event, whether it was we would go grab sushi at happy hour, we would go do bowling one night, or, mini golf or something to just take us out of the working world, bring everybody that was on the
Mm,
team somewhere else and just have fun and just get to know each other. You could bring your spouses, your kids. It wasn't just an employee type thing. And when we opened up the corporate office and we started to expand in this building, we carried that over. So we still do that today. You talked about potlucks earlier. We do a annual crawfish boil every year. We do Thanksgiving potluck every year. Usually the few days before Thanksgiving Day, we'll have a big potluck here in the office, and everybody can bring a
mm,
creative dish that they made from home. And for me, those are important, right? I see companies all the time. They do big fancy galas and spend hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars on events, and it's great, it's awesome, but it's kind of just like the shiny object. I mean, where's the real
mm,
substance of what you're trying to do here? You don't have to spend a ridiculous amount of time or a ridiculous amount of money to make something feel the way that it should. And so I think
right.
it's important to have those. We do it probably at least once a month. There's some months we do several gatherings as a group. And I mean, even if it's me contacting our marketing department, say, hey, man, I'm buying everybody lunch today. What do you guys feel like having? Right. And sit down with the marketing team and connect with those guys. So it's nice to be able to connect with each person in the company on a level that actually
Mm.
means something.
Yeah, I mean, when we were talking about distractions and stuff earlier, right? Like the whole get bored principle. I believe that that firmly needs to be implemented with teams. I just had a conversation with this with my co-founder the other day. So I have, by the grace of God, been blessed with like the some of the smartest humans I've ever met in my entire life that decided that they wanted to come work with me, right? And there's a reason I say with and not for, right? They came to work with me, not for me. Like we see our vision collectively and we move forward. I may have to bear the burden of the final decision, but that doesn't mean that I want to get there on my own. But I will take responsibility for what happens after that decision is made. So the way that I kind of set things up, I have a co-founder, right? And he is, we'll say he's highly disagreeable, right? He keeps me in line. He's almost like, I'll come up with this grand vision of what we need to do. And he's like, that's not even practically implementable. Try again. But he's also super intellectual. Then I have another, my chief technical officer completely innovated our data analytics program, right? Like built his own custom dashboard, gave us our own products. He's been legally blind since he was 11 or 10. And but he uses a screen reader. He can build code websites because he can lean in really close to the screen. So he built an entire accessibility program for us and help people make their websites digitally accessible. And they constantly are butting heads because they're two really, really potent personalities. They're very driven, they're entrepreneurial, and they're smart. And I was like, guys, you do realize if you just hung out more, that this wouldn't happen, right? So we had this client that we needed to go see. And I pretended I was like, oh, I've got other meetings that day. I can't go. Like, darn, sorry. They drove up there by themselves. It's like a 40-minute drive, right? Drove up there, drove back, and we now have like 5 or 6 new things going on in the accessibility space, and they're taking ownership of it, and they're running with it, and they love each other again. I'm like, how
Yes.
mind-boggling, guys.
But
You know, it's like, but if I were to put on that gala or like a fundraiser, to your point, it's keeping people connected. They don't get
yep.
bored. You know, when you're at a potluck and you're drinking a beer and you're having conversations with a bunch of friends from work while you're not at work, you feel a lot more free to be like, "Hey, how was your kid's soccer game? You know, let's talk about that. Let's learn more about each other, not about what we
That's
do."
also one thing, I don't know what it is. I'll say it a million times. I love human energy, man, human interaction. And we went through, I think everybody went through a period when COVID first hit of, working from home and, businesses are downsizing and everybody can have workspaces and you don't need an office to be in. We gave everybody the option. We said, hey, if you want to work from home, you can. We'd like for you to stay here because we feel like our energy in the office, we bounce that off each other. We feed off of that. And that's what gets us to thrive during the day is everybody being here. And I can walk 10 feet away and go look at my CMO and say, hey, let's drop some marketing strategies or something. To me, this digital age that we live in, it's drawing us further and further apart instead of further and further, instead of
Mhm.
closer to each other. So for me, it was amazing to see we had all of our corporate team during the pandemic stayed here in the office. They didn't work from home. And it just was a testament to we hired the right people. They wanted to be a part of a culture. They wanted to be a part of a family. They wanted to truly connect with people and help grow not just the brand but themselves. And we see that
Mm,
all the
mm.
time today. I mean, when we bring people in, it's just amazing how they want to be here. They want to be in the office. I've got some staff that show up an hour before they should be here and stay 3 hours after they should be here. So it's exciting to see that you're surrounding yourselves with people that have that same passion for connectivity.
Mm. Yeah, when I first hired James, I literally had to lock him out of our systems on the weekend because I caught him working. I was like, "Hey, man, you have a fiance, 2 dogs, and a mom. Like, stop working on I appreciate you, I love you for it, but stop working on my
Yep, yeah,
stuff on the weekends." And I remember when I first did it, he, like, came to me on Monday, he's like, "Yeah," he's like, "Why couldn't I get into any of my stuff?" I was like, "Dude, you're working too much." He was like, "I don't know if I've ever had a boss tell me to stop working." I was like, "Yeah, because I want you for the long
yes,
term." I was like, "I don't need you burning yourself out."
right.
I was like, "You need to go out and live life." It was like, you're going to get so busy building one, you forget to live
Well,
one.
people get
And
so
like,
locked in on just busting their asses. I mean, people that are true dedicated workers in whatever field they're in, they lose track of time. I mean, a 10 a 12-hour day goes by like that. You forget you didn't even eat lunch, or
mhm.
you forgot to make a phone call to your spouse that you were supposed to make, or whatever it's going to be. I mean, you get lost and you get zoned in what you're building.
Right. Oh, that happens to me all the time. I'm genuinely curious just because of the way that my experience has been in entrepreneurship. Have you personally, or do you know anybody in the entrepreneurial field that has dealt or is dealing with ADHD?
Oh, I think I've got the squirrel mentality since I was like 5, man. I tell you right now, it is the toughest thing in the world for me to sit in one place at a time. If we could do this and I could be walking around, I would be doing that.
Dude, I feel
It's
it.
very tough for me to sit in one spot. Most definitely. I've done speaking engagements before, and it's funny, they put like a bar height stool there for you to sit on, and I immediately move that thing off the stage. I'm like, man, I'm pacing
Yep.
across this stage. I may jump into the crowd and start walking around in the crowd, and for me,
Start
it's
surfing.
exactly for me.
Right.
It's tough to just sit in one spot. I'm definitely, my mind's all over the place. I'm one of those guys where
Yep.
if I'm reading a book or a magazine or an article, I read the first paragraph and then I'm like, oh crap, what did I just read? I got to read it like four. I got to read it like four or
Yeah, bro.
five
I
times.
feel you. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. There's an app called Speechify that's really sick that I use that like reads it back to me at like 3x speed, and I can follow along on the page, so it's reading to me while I'm
Ooh,
reading it. Because I'm like kind of a crossbreed between, I think I'm probably a little bit dyslexic, but I'm also just like diagnosed ADHD. I got myself off of meds. I was lucky enough that my mom didn't raise me on medication. And then when COVID hit, I think it was a combination of like losing two of the identities that I'd built for myself in the military and nursing, starting my business and just working so much that I got so stressed and overwhelmed that I couldn't focus on anything. So I got on meds for a short period of time. And man, I felt like they stole my
yeah,
soul. It's like I was on meds, and then like all of the squirrel thoughts went away. And I was like, hold on. I was like, I don't need
yeah,
all of them to go away. Like, I run a creative business, man. Like, I got to be able to come up with written copy and crazy ass marketing ideas for people. And like, maybe if I was just doing Excel spreadsheets all day and I was an accountant, like the Adderall would work for me, but it took away too much almost. And so I started to, the reason I ask is because I've encountered more and more entrepreneurs that are either ADHD and or they exhibit the symptoms of. And that fascination started with me when I was reading an article about like Bill Gates and Sir Richard Branson and all of these prolific entrepreneurs that are diagnosed ADHD. It's like 80+% of them. And so I was like, okay, well, the really bad side of ADHD that everybody seems to think about when I talk to them is can't sit still, can't focus on shit, rereading paragraphs, like squirrel thoughts, not present in conversations, constantly have to ask you, like, "Well, I didn't hear what you just said for the last 30 seconds." And I do that stuff all the time. There's a little hook underneath my light switch when I leave my house. That's where I hang my keys. Otherwise, they just disappear. But on the flip side of that, the superpower with ADHD is we can learn the equivalent of like 16 hours worth of learning in 4 hours if we focus. And we're also super good at pattern detection. And this is why I think that empathy and kind of what you're saying, like you can tell the energy in a room before anybody starts talking. It's because we can take in so much more data than any other person, which is why we get so
yep,
distracted all the time because we're taking in
yeah,
so many inputs. But over the years, you learn to kind of narrow that focus down. And at least what I've learned is how to flip between pattern detection and focus. It's like if I need to be pattern detection, I can do a series of things and it flips me into pattern detection mode. And if I need to be focused, I put on my headphones, I put on classical music, I drink chamomile tea, and kind of just like
it's your
kind of
Zen
try to
moment.
shut
It's your
myself
Zen
down.
moment. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Are there things that you do that are you spiritual? Are you meditative? Are there things that you do to kind of help mitigate those racing thoughts? Because I'm sure as you're scaling as rapidly as you are, they've probably increased in intensity over the
Most
last couple of
definitely.
years.
One thing that I do, and it's extremely simple, anybody can do it. And I actually got it. I was seeing a therapist probably 3 or 4 years ago. I went through depression. It was really weird. It was like a 3 month. It was like a 3 or 4 month span where I don't know. I remember just like losing like every good quality in me, right? And I was even scared to fly. Like I'm on a plane every 3 or 4 days. I mean, flying doesn't alter me at all. I was even terrified to fly. It got really weird. And for me, I remember seeing my therapist, and I was explaining to her my entire life. I was explaining to her how I was feeling, and she said, "Man, you don't ever stop. You don't ever take breaks. Like from the moment you wake up, if your alarm
Mm.
goes off at 6 in the morning, 5 in the morning, 4 in the morning, whatever time that is, your phone's blown up. You've got 37 emails from the night before. You've got 17 text messages. I mean, we deal with clients overseas in different countries, so my time clock is all
Time
jacked up
zones.
all the time." And so for me, she said, "Hey, look, I want you to do one simple exercise. I want you to see how it works over the next few weeks until we see each other again." She said, "If you have to wake up at 7 o'clock, I want you to set your alarm for an hour earlier. I want you to wake up at 6. And same goes and so forth." She goes, "If you wake up at 6 o'clock, I want you to set your alarm for 5. I want you to take I drink this same natural based energy drink every single morning. It's kind of like my routine instead of coffee." And so she goes, "I want you to take your energy drink. I want you to go on the back patio of your house. I want you to keep your phone, your laptop in your room. And I want you to spend 1 hour with Kyle, with you, yourself. Just be in your thoughts, just relax. Don't talk. Don't have conversations with anybody." At that time, I was actually married. And so she said, "Hey, tell your wife to stay in the house. Don't come interrupt you." And you'd be amazed that hour. Wow. Like I was, when she told me to do that, immediately in my head, I'm like, this is going nowhere. This is going to do nothing for me, right? After probably the second day, like it happened that fast. The second or third day, it was like this weight was just unlocked off my body and off my shoulders. And I just remember just feeling like I didn't know how to explain it. I was like, God, I feel like just an incredible person. I feel like I can bring so much more to my day and bring so much more for my growth. And I still
Mm.
do that every day,
Mm.
man. It's I don't care if I'm overseas, different country. If I'm on vacation, I'll at least wake up 30 minutes before I'm supposed to and have my me time.
Oh yeah, no, that's one of the things. So when I work with teams, because occasionally I'll work with uh, rapidly growing teams, and I'll kind of help kind of craft a little bit of the culture. That's really become my passion over the last year or two. Because after building my stuff, it's like, well, as much as I love ads and looking at data all day, my real passion is helping people build people. So I could do the marketing strategy and the brand strategy and stuff, but what I really love is sitting down and really helping organize these teams. That's what I did when I was in the military. And one of the things, it's funny that you bring up that 1 hour specifically, because a when I was building teams in the military, I would say that to my guys. I would be like, listen, I was like, if we have something that we need to do and we need to get done today, do not start up and immediately start your day with my phone call. I was like, you need to, I didn't articulate it in the full hour, but it's like, you need to get up, and with the energy that you use to start your day is the energy that'll follow you for the rest of the day. So if you start your day anxious as hell, getting on a conference call immediately after rolling out of bed, you're going to be anxious, and your body, your nervous system is going to remember that for the rest of the day. It's like, and the way that I explain it to people, it's like for people with anxiety or depression or constantly under pressure, it's like waking up with a bear in your
Yes,
bedroom.
yes.
And then that bear just sits in your back seat of your car while you're on their way to work, like Ricky Bobby and the cougar, and then it's just following you around the office all day. Whereas you could wake up and you could have a chinchilla sitting on your shoulder, and then you just have this nice little thing to
Yep.
pet every now and then. You get to, hang out. I love how you said I got to hang out with Kyle, because the second half of that is I'm actually writing a blog post right now. I swear, on like, I'm doing that exact thing. I just started doing that intuitively about 2 weeks ago again, because I was feeling myself kind of getting down. And so what I'll do is I'll wake up an hour early, and I just go out and I walk outside, like in my downtown area. There's no podcast listening. And this is part of the whole getting bored. There's no podcast listening. There's no motivational YouTube video. I'm not listening to music. I'm drinking a cup of black coffee and I'm looking at snowflakes. I'm like noticing art on a building that I didn't notice before. There's so many things that we don't perceive because we're so connected all the time. And if you're able to disconnect yourself, to your point, sometimes within a
It's
day.
amazing. It's amazing how when you disconnect, you can reconnect much, much, much better.
Mm,
I've learned that, and it's
mm,
almost like you get so lost in life, you get so consumed by the world. Like I said, million miles an hour, we're running a million miles an hour, and sometimes you got to slow down. You got to step back and just parallel park for a minute and be with yourself. I mean, it's almost like
right.
that funny meme. I've seen it a few times where it says something about if you're a parent, the feeling of pulling up to the house after a long day's work, and you just sit in the car and have like 10 minutes to yourself before you walk into four kids and your wife or your husband. Like you're mentally just resetting yourself, right? And that's so true. I remember,
Mm,
I don't have any
mm.
kids, but I remember coming home from a long day at work, and my girlfriend, my wife is in the house, and I'm like, okay, 10 minutes of me, 10 minutes of me, right? Yeah. So,
Right. Kind of bring yourself together. There's a book. I almost want to send you this book that I interviewed a psychiatrist not too long ago, and he wrote this book called The Art of Stopping. And it's all about like he has these three different tiers, right? And he's like, either you choose to implement these or the universe will choose to implement them for you at some point. And the one that the universe implements, he calls a grinding halt, where it's like you've reached a point where almost like because I've been through a similar depressive episode, where like I had just taken off my uniform, I had just taken off my nursing scrubs. I was full time into the business. I had to take my retirement out of the hospital and invest it into the company, which my dad thought was a stupid ass idea. So I'm dealing with that, right? And I hit that same type of place, and that's kind of where I had to research and really understand. So I interviewed this psychologist or psychiatrist, and he said, you want to start with 5 minutes in the mirror. Just make eye contact with yourself while you're brushing your teeth. And he was like, reach out and touch it, even if you need to clean off the fingerprints. And then he was like, and then you can slowly get to the point where now I'm waking up, an hour and a half beforehand. And I really enjoy prayerful meditation. So like I'll go on my walk and then I come back and I meditate for 10 or 15 minutes. But what that does, it for me having hardcore ADHD, it's really hard for me to make lists and stay accountable to that list unless I give myself that time in the morning to mentally create my list. If I just try to jump right into my day, I can't try to backtrack and
yeah.
catch up that energy to be able to focus long enough to build the list. Because to your point, we've got so much coming inbound. There's 17 emails, 32 text messages, 4 missed calls, 50 messages from random marketers on LinkedIn wanting you on their podcast. There's all of these, there's all of these things constantly hitting us, and we can't go back and backtrack. So wow, Kyle, man, this was I knew that I was excited for the episode, but this has been absolutely phenomenal. This was a great interview. I think that there's a lot of people that are going to be able to pull a lot of value out of this. I value your transparency and I appreciate your
most
time, my
definitely.
friend.
Same here, man.
This
It's
has
been
been
enjoyable.
fantastic. Cool. So if people want to learn more about iCRYO, or say that there's somebody that's listening to this that's a nurse that has a whole bunch of money left over from working travel and she hates the hospital systems and they want to get into cryo, how do they figure out
Hilarious
how to
that
do
you
that?
say that because we've had that happen a lot lately. But yeah, for us, you can find us on social media. We're connected everywhere: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. At iCRYO, ICRYO on Instagram. Facebook is the same. I also love to connect with people personally. So if you want to connect with me on social media, Instagram is at Kyle William Jones, my full name. Love to connect with you guys on LinkedIn if you're in the business side, and Facebook as well. You can also go to our website for a few things, iCRYO.com. Take a look at the research on some of our modalities that we offer and how they could possibly help you. And then for those of you entrepreneur, business mindset of people out there, if you're interested in the franchise opportunity, I think one of the greatest things about this business model is not just being able to make money and create a business for yourself and a legacy income possibly for your family and generations to come, but the impactful testimonials, the stories, the ways we are impacting people on such a positive side. It's such a rewarding business to be in.
Mhm. Agreed, 100%. And so for everybody that's listening, you'll also be able to find all of those links down in the description of the podcast episode. This has been another episode of the Apex Podcast with guest Kyle Jones from iCRYO. And make sure you hit that subscribe button because, like I said in the beginning, I'm watching.